Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel. Time for this week's edition of the Recruiting Breakdown. It is a National Signing Day primer edition of the Recruiting Breakdown. But Gerry, anytime we have the show on the channel, it's brought to you by our good friend Mark Saunders.
The only insurance agent you'll need, that is Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders, serves the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas. That's everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Do what so many other On Texas Football community members have done in the last couple of years. That's give Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office a call today, 512-218-8571. With over 35 years of experience, our OTF guarantees you'll be in great hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders. Again, give him a call, 512-218-8571.
You know, many years ago, about 15, 16 years ago, a wise man who may be on this panel with me right now told me, Jeff, it doesn't matter where your class is ranked. You got to answer two questions on signing day. Are you a more talented football team? And did you meet all your needs? And that's what we're going to look at for this Texas 2026 signing class. Did the Longhorns meet their needs? So, CJ, I'll start with you at the most important position on the field, which is quarterback. With Diabell, did the Longhorns meet their needs in 2026?
Yeah, big old check mark for me. Diabell, top 5 quarterback in the country. You make the argument, probably, number 1 quarterback in the country. Very athletic. He brings a big name, a big personality that will be attractive as long as he is at Texas, right? Folks want to play with talented quarterbacks, and that name will go a long way to attracting other talent out of the high school ranks or out of the portal, knowing that this is a guy that Texas will be able to develop into a high-level playing quarterback. Texas absolutely knocked it out of the park, and they did so very early, committed June 2024. They did a great job holding on to him because, look, once you commit somewhere, it doesn't mean that you're completely off limits. Texas fought tooth and nail, making sure that this was the guy for them in the class.
Gerry, when we look at running back, you and I talked about this when Jet Walker committed. Not only did Texas meet their needs, that's obviously what we're asking here, but the build of these two backs with Derek Cooper and Jet Walker, you're talking about two bigger, more downhill type backs. So along with Gerry answering whether Texas met their needs or not, is this just a case of, hey, this is what was in the class, or do you feel like this is Steve Sarkisian saying, no, if we want to be better running the football, I've got to have bigger backs?
I definitely think there's something to that, Jeff. Now, I think Derek Cooper and Xavier Crowell were the top 2 guys, and both are studs. I mean, both are tremendous talents. But, yeah, I do think there's something to that downhill. We got to remember, Derek Cooper was committed to Georgia. They saw the same thing, right? This is a guy that's 6'1", 210. He'll probably be 220, 222, 225 when it's all said and done with 10.75, 10.7 type 100-meter speed. So he's that big back, powerful back. Got a really good kind of skip cut the power on senior tape that can also ride out, has enough ride out speed to make some big plays for you. And then Jet Walker, another bigger back that's a 210-ish. It'll probably carry 225. So I think Texas addressed that. Now, they had that need of a second back pop up in this class when Jarrett Gibson hit the portal. And we think there's also a possibility Texas lose somebody else, whether that's pro or portal or both, right, or transfer. So I think their need for 2 backs was there. I like that Texas went with 2 bigger backs in this class. You can always go to the portal if you want to and get more of that gadget guy. But I think coming off a class with James Simon, who I think has a chance to be a really good player, getting Derek Cooper behind him and then Jet Walker as a second back in that class, Texas absolutely filled their needs at the running back position.
CJ, let's go to wide receivers and tight ends. We'll group those 2 positions together. And, Texas maybe didn't get the number 1 wide receiver. Obviously, Jalen Lott was a guy that they wanted, not going to get him. But did Texas fill their needs with what they got? And, CJ, if you want to throw a caveat in here, if Jermaine Bishop ends up playing offense at Texas, how much does this change your outlook on this position?
Yeah, quite a bit. I think Texas did a fine job of addressing versatility. A different style of wide receivers this year. Look, I'll start with Cohen Brown because I've seen him the most of the 3. He's an 86, maybe 87 3-star by the ranking. Like, he's going to outplay that immediately. From the minute that he steps foot on campus, I think Texas knows that they got themselves a gem. And, obviously you take a guy that was committed to USC previously. They saw it as well. Lane Kiffin has done a fine job finding pretty talented wide receivers in his own right. So, a big fan of Cohen Brown. Texas told him right away, Matthew Golden 2.0 is what we and how we plan to use you. Of course, Chris Stewart, I think, again, with what Texas had done previously with some bigger body wide receivers to get a guy that's about 5'11", 6 foot that can really make plays after the catch, That's intriguing to me. And then, of course, Jermaine Bishop, only one of the more prolific wide receivers and playmakers we've seen in Texas high school football history. It's pretty darn impressive the way that they were able to construct those three. And again, I know the rankings might not be the prettiest, but they found playmakers with the ball in their hands. And to add on to Charlie Gillette, look, once he gets his body right, the physicality will be there waiting for him. And I think that's one thing that when you look at the Texas tight end position, even since this staff originally got here, the big question mark is, do you have a dog at tight end that can clean out the dirty work on the edge position and provide after the catch ability for you? If you compare the two up, look, you got yourself quite a weapon. I think Charlie Gillette has the ability, the potential after a few years to be that piece for you.
Jerry, we'll go to the offensive line, and Texas recently lost Max Wright. He flipped to SMU. You added Caden Scherer, flipped him from Stanford, but Scherer, I think at this point, might be viewed as more of a swing guy, whereas Max Wright was a tackle all the way. Where are you at on whether or not Kyle Flood got all of his needs met in the 2026 cycle?
They need to get one of these flips on Wednesday, whether that is Malachi Lee or Bryson Martinez. One of those two guys needs to come home for Texas, I think, to meet the needs. I think John Turntine's a tackle all the way. I don't care about height. He's got tackle length. He's got tackle feet, athleticism, tackle body quickness, reactive quickness. I don't agree with the national ranking on him. I think John Turntine's going to be a really, really, really good football player. But I do think there's a need for that second tackle in this class for sure. So that if Texas can get a big flip on signing day, I will say they've done a pretty good job meeting their needs. Nicholas Robertson is interesting because when he committed, it was as a guard. He played some center this year at Klein. I think he's now a center/guard, kind of like Devin Coleman was coming out of Cedar Hill a year ago. He's a center/guard. So I do think that's one change in the class. They do have a guy that may potentially play center long term. And then obviously with Caden Scherer, you mentioned him, more of that swing guy. And I'm not sure whether that he ends up at guard or tackle. I might lean to guard a little bit there, but that'll be proven out in time. I see that very similar to Jackson Christian athletically. So I could see that being a guard long-term for Texas. But again, I think they need to hit one of these two tackles, Malachi Lee or Bryson Martinez, committed elsewhere on Wednesday to have met their tackle needs. They need two true and really good tackles in this class. Because even if Trevor Gooseby comes back for one more year, somebody's got to be ready at that left tackle spot in that year to get ready. Not saying Jordan Coleman isn't. I think he's more of a right tackle. They need somebody to step up as that next left tackle in this recruiting class. And we'll see if Texas gets two options of that or if it's going to be John Turntine.
CJ, on defense, we'll start with the interior defensive line. And this is a position room that's had a lot of volatility in the recruiting cycle with you're trying to flip guys, you're trying to hang on to guys. Some guys are leaving, some guys might leave. Really up until the 11th hour here, there's still some movement. But where are you at on what Texas has done on the interior defensive line? And similar to the Jermaine Bishop question on offense, how does Jamarian Carlton figure into the plans you think for Texas as far as a potential interior defensive lineman by the time he's done at Texas?
Yeah, all in all, a roller coaster of a cycle at the defensive line. You know, at one point you had 4 committed. Now it looks like you might be going into signing day with 3. Maybe you lose one as well. I don't know. But I do think you see the ceiling of Texas recruiting the defensive line, right? Going into Florida, Mississippi, Georgia, Louisiana, and finding ways to be, if not snagging the top kids in the state, you know, very close to doing so. I like what Texas has. I think they probably need to address it in the portal again, just one more year. But when you look at what they have currently, and I'll start with Jamarian Carlton, 6'5", 280 pounds. He's going to be a guy that sticks in that 3-tech, 5-tech role. I love Corey Wells. He kind of reminded me a little bit of Alfred Collins on tape, but very raw, right? Alfred Collins got to campus and had to grow or gain about 45 pounds to get to where he ended up being at 330 pounds. But the motor that you see with Corey Wells is there. Texas obviously needs to fight to keep Vodney Cleveland. North Carolina's making that one very difficult. But for me right now, you have some talented pieces, maybe not the numbers that you would have expected coming into this season. And that's why I think maybe you go out and get maybe 1, maybe 2 more guys just to help bridge that gap out of the portal as well.
Jerry, on the edge, Richard Wesley is your one true, legit, bona fide edge in this class. But I guess depending on whether needs were met or not is Do you consider Jamarian Carlton part of this group, maybe like kind of Justice Terry was last year? And do you consider Kosi Okpala a part of this group down the road?
Yeah, that second one's the more interesting one because he's similar to Trey Moore for me in terms of frame, in terms of, or Brad Spence, type of player he is or can become. So I think he's kind of the either or. I think Jamarian Carlton's going to be a 300-plus pound 3 technique that may play some 5. So he's an interior guy. I think Richard Wesley's a stud, could be a first-round pick one day after watching him work out in July. He had a really good senior season on a team that shut out most teams. He played the first half of probably 7 of their 10 games. So statistically, they had 12.5 tackles, 8.5 sacks, but they just dominated everybody. Then got upset in the first round. But Richard Wesley is 6'4", 260. He's got power. He's got speed. He's got quickness. He is very well trained by Trey Lewis out of SoCal area. Does a great job. Works with several NFL guys. I think he's going to play next year. So, and he's an early enrollee. I think he has a chance to play right away for Texas. And I know that's saying something because people are going to be like, well, you got Lance Jackson coming back. You got Colin Simmons coming back. Smith Orogbo, Texas likes after his redshirt year, coming back off that knee injury. You could have Colton Vosick return. We'll see who returns or who doesn't off that team. Brad Spence plays some edge, right? But I still think Richard Wesley is a really, really talented player that I could see getting snaps similar to Lance Jackson as a freshman. I think he's that talented.
Yeah,
so I think they filled needs because they got a 5-star level guy at edge, and they have one more versatile piece, which I think his future position in Okpala is to be TBD.
Yeah, I'll add, Jerry, similar to what you said about Trevor Gooseby on offense. You're going into Colin Simmons' draft eligible year, so now's the time where you got to figure out, hey, who's next? What's going to happen on the edge once he's gone? CJ, as we go to linebacker, Tyler Atkinson obviously is maybe the crown jewel of this class on defense, period, but definitely linebacker. It's an interesting position for Texas. We know Anthony Hill is not declared yet, but in all likelihood, he's gone. Trey Moore's out of eligibility. But you bring 3 of your top 5 back, potentially Brad Spence, Leonga Lafau, Anthony Smith, Bo Barnes coming off of a year where he got his feet wet a little bit. Deuce Cunningham was mostly on special teams. Where are you at, CJ, on meeting needs at linebacker?
Yeah, from a numbers perspective, I thought they did exactly what they needed to do to maintain depth at the linebacking spot, right? Long are the days where Texas needed to move a running back to linebacker or vice versa, because they've addressed that both in the 2026 class. But, Jerry, you mentioned whether or not Okpala sticks at linebacker, moves to the edge, is a hybrid guy that plays both. Valuable piece there, right? Because we've seen how much PK in this defense values a Trey Moore or a Brad Spence in this defense. So I'm a big fan of that. Obviously, we got to see Rocky Cummings on his official visit. Checks every box in terms of the eye test, right? 6'4", 220. He looks like a guy that, again, could provide some valuable special teams immediately for you. And watching the tape, you see the versatility. Plays offense, was a halfback, fullback kind of piece for them as well. And then, of course, Tyler Atkinson. I think he is very much in line to be an immediate impact guy. He will be a guy that wears the green dot. He will call your defense for multiple years. This is a stud. One of my favorite players that Texas has signed on the defensive side that I've gotten to see in person, up there with Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons. I think he's that special, and I think he's got a very high, bright future for the Longhorns.
Jerry, I'll go to you for the secondary, and similar to wide receiver a little bit for me, it kind of understated guys just because there hadn't been a ton of drama there. Smoke Matthews and Hayward Howard Jr., they committed and have stayed committed. We know they've been looking for another piece, whether it's Teray Davis or Josiah Villamil. Where are you at, Jerry, on what Texas has done in the secondary in this 26 cycle?
I think Samari Matthews is very similar to Manny Muhammad. So I like that. And I'm not saying he's going to be a freshman starter like Manny was, to be clear. But I think he's similar in his skill set, similar in his size and frame. Very physical player. He fits the SEC mold, I think, with Samari Matthews at corner. I like that a lot. Yaim Riley is a nickel. Obviously, he's a very physical player. They happen to play Friendswood Mild High School in the first round of the playoffs. I talked to a couple of parents of the best players at Friendswood, and they said that kid going to Texas is the most physical player on the field. That's what you like to hear coming out of games like that. They're playoff games. That was a last-second game. You like to hear that your nickelback commitment was the most physical player on a football field, right? So that he fits the SEC physicality mold. Hayward Howard is such an interesting prospect because he's played as much safety as he has corner as a senior. And he asked the Edna Carr, staff. He's like, hey, man, let me help at safety here. Not that he didn't have confidence he can play corner. He saw, from a football standpoint, he saw a need for the end of car team. He's like, look, man, I don't get challenged much at corner. Can I go play? Let me go play safety and help our defense out. That's a bust at the safety position. Plays next to an LSU commit there when he's playing safety on an extremely talented end of car team. But he's 6'3", all of it, closing in on 6'4", going to be 17 years old when he enrolls at Texas. Probably going to be a guy that's 6'4" and closes in on 200 pounds over time with really long arms. And he's a physical player. So I think Texas got 3 defensive backs right now that have the SEC physicality component, which I think is very important in the league. And then we'll see what happens with like Teray Davis. Does he go to pick Texas over Washington? I talked to a Big 12 assistant coach that had offered him, saw him in person. He thinks he's more of a safety long-term than he is a corner. Mark Orphe's leading that recruitment of Teray Davis. So if Teray Davis does pick Texas, the question will be, where does he play? I think the teams on the West Coast saw him more as a safety, which will be interesting to see long-term if he picks Texas.
All right, we'll wrap this up on the other side. But, Jerry, one more time, let everybody know why. If they've got anything on 4 wheels and need to get it insured, they need to go talk to our good friend Mark Saunders.
Yeah, everything from your home, car, boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV hunting season. Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders serves the Austin and Round Rock area in the entire state of Texas. That means he's your guy. Give Texas alum Mark Saunders a call today, 512-218-8571. Who would you trust? Somebody with more than 35 years of experience for all your insurance needs.
CJ, I'll start with you. Your final thoughts on this 2026 cycle as we head into the early signing period, the 72-hour window, and then, put your cap on once the dust settles, what you think this class looks like, and has it changed at all your outlook on what Texas needs to attack in the transfer portal?
I think this class did a fine job of finding the high-level marquee guys at key positions, right? You get a 5-star edge, you get a 5-star quarterback. John Turntine, Jerry, I think you and I both agree, is a 5-star level guy. You get a linebacker that could call your defense with 5-star level intellect and physical attributes. I think that's fantastic. All the while, I think Texas, from a money's perspective, did a very fine job of filling out its 2026 class while also allowing itself some money to play around in the portal, right? And to make sure that numbers are where they need to be from a depth perspective and ultimately allow themselves some flexibility to go get that blue chip guy, should an immediate impact guy at certain level positions arise. And I think that's something that you look at previous classes where Texas was number 1 or number 3 and you say, hey, across the board, there's a 4-star plus guy, right? Maybe not on paper this year, but you get high level ceiling guys, in my opinion, at each position. And that's something that I think as we move forward with revenue sharing, with all of this NIL stuff, it's the smarter approach from financial side, and they did a fantastic job, in my opinion, with this class.
Jerry, as you give your final thoughts, I think CJ made a great point. As we go forward, everything, it seems like every recruiting cycle, some kind of legislation or something changes.
Yeah.
And within your final thoughts, Jerry, how do you think the Texas staff is handling just really where yearly your plan has to kind of change on the fly?
Yeah, I think they're doing a good job of that. Look, I do think it changes yearly. I mean, and I think there's things universities are having to figure out right now too, even more so than the college staffs are. What do you do with NIL outside of the rev share? Because that's not really a Texas coach or LSU coach or Alabama coach decision. That's more at the university level, how they have to make all that work. So the staffs are having to navigate a lot of things, not even knowing the answers that the university are going to provide to them. So I think that makes it very unique. But I think the Texas staff is done a good job in this class. I'll say this, and it's my bad for not mentioning it. I think they had an impact punter in this class, and Mikey Bukowskis, like an all SEC league level guy over time. Jake Collette's a talented kicker. I still think Texas will go kicker in the portal, but Collette, after a year to get acclimated to college football, Trot O'Neill, long snapper, is probably a multi-year starter for your program. So I think they did a good job addressing all 3 phases in this class. And I think the staff is doing a good job constantly maneuvering and adapting as this whole NIL world changes, especially with rev share now. I think it's very difficult when the university's having to make decisions on NIL outside of rev share and how they're going to do that, how they're going to go about that. And you're kind of left in limbo, still trying to build your roster. I think that's very difficult. And I think Texas is doing a pretty good job navigating it.
All right.
I think this class rank will be Texas will be 7 or 8 unless they get a flip of one of the two, because I think Vodney Cleveland will go to North Carolina. Then Texas, if Texas gets one of the two offensive linemen to flip to them, I think Texas will finish anywhere 6 or 7 in this recruiting class.
All right, Gerry, CJ, thank you guys for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to our friend Mark Saunders and Allstate for sponsoring it. If you're not a member, over at ontexasfootball.com, that's all right. You can get over to the site right now and sign up using the promo code OTFOG, and that'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for just $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our recruiting coverage all year round. For Gerry, for CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and until next time, hook 'em.